All right, hi everybody. Welcome to the Sparrow and Starfish classes practicum information session. A lot of you are starting or will be starting if you're in the React class, your final projects in the next week or two. Starfish students have already started their final projects this week. So hopefully it will go well for you. I'm sending you all of my positive good vibes and hopes that you don't run into any kind of bugs or issues throughout that process. But we're excited to see your final projects. We know you've been busting your butts through class. So we're really excited to see how the individual class portion part wraps up. And we wanted to do the practicum info session so that way you have an idea of, okay, class ends. Once we're done with our final project, what happens next? So we are presenting on that to give you an idea of what we'll be covering here in the next 15 to 20 minutes is going to be general information, the what, when, who, why, and how about practicum, the structure, so how it's set up and what your work week during the practicum looks like, because it is a little bit different from your class week. And then the curriculum, so what you'll be doing and what you'll be learning, what to expect, so what's going to happen during and after practicum once that wraps up. And then, of course, apprenticeship information, because that might be something that happens after practicum for some of you. And then we'll have questions and answers at the end. But just as a reminder, if you have questions that you want to ask throughout, you're welcome to do so. You can either pop them up in the chat, or you can unmute and ask, or you can do the raise hand feature. So whatever you're comfortable doing. All right, without any further ado, let's dive in. Okay, the practicum general information. So what is practicum? It's an 8-week-long group project. So you'll be put into small teams of 3 to 5 students. You'll have a mentor that's assigned to your small group specifically, so that you have somebody to turn to that's more experienced if you run into issues that you're hitting while working on your projects. You'll continue working on the skills that you learned throughout your advanced class. You also might be learning some new features or skills within that tech stack to be able to add in depending on what your project is and what you're trying to build. So you might be learning some new things, but that could vary from group to group depending on what you decide is your project. During the time of practicum, you'll be learning predominantly how to work collaboratively on a project. So through your intro class with us, if you took that, and through the advanced class, all of your work's just been yourself with your own repository. Practicum is really intended to give you an opportunity to find out what happens when you have multiple people touching the same code base and working on moving parts of the exact same project that has just the one code base. So it's an opportunity to be able to learn how that workflow works when you're on a team development environment and getting experience with that. So when is practicum is the next question. So your classes end on July 12th. You'll present your final projects sometime on either July 13th, 14th, or 15th. The last week or two of class, I'll post some times and days that might be good opportunities for final project presentations. So feel free to vote on those when those polls go up. So that way we can determine what days and times your class's final project presentations will be. The practicum portion will begin on Monday, July 25th. So you do have about a 2-week gap from when you turn in your final project until when class starts. Did somebody have a question? I thought I heard somebody unmute quickly. Yeah, Monica, did you have a question? No? Oh, yeah.
Not right now.
Okay, all right, good stuff. So you'll start on Monday the 25th. So instead of classes going Wednesday to Tuesday, once you start practicum on Monday the 25th, then you'll do Monday through Friday, unless your group determines otherwise. So if the 3 to 5 of you say it works better if we do Tuesday through Saturday because of our work schedules or whatever, then that's totally fine. But in general, we're trying to kind of get you used to a schedule that's more common to a work environment. So sort of that Monday to Friday kind of feel. Practicum will end on Friday, September 16th, and you'll present in Weekly Cafe on Tuesday, September 20th. Don't worry or freak out about the presentations. They're small little 5-minute presentations that you'll do together as a group for those of you that are able to attend. The presentations happen during the Weekly Cafe. So that's for Code the Dream staff and Code the Dream apprentices. We usually have a weekly cafe every Tuesday at noon Eastern, so that way we can cover anything that's important for everybody within the organization to know. And so you'll just present and say, hey, here's what we've done and here's what we've learned. So it's very much like final project presentations, only you get to have your teammates with you too. So it's a little bit less pressure than final project presentations if you don't like presenting. Okay. Next grouping of information is going to be who's involved with practicum. So students obviously make up the practicum predominantly. So you need to have completed your advanced class final project in time. And the students who would participate in practicum are students who either want to pursue the apprenticeship position, or if you want to gain team experience to add to your resume before or during job hunting, or if you just want more experience with the tech stack that you've been learning in class, and or want to learn what that whole team environment is like, whether you're intending to job hunt or not. If you want to gain team experience, then you'll be a part of that. So it's not required. We do strongly encourage it because you do get a lot of really valuable experiences that you wouldn't have had up to this point with our classes because you haven't done any group work yet. So we do encourage folks to do it, but we know for some folks that might not be the path that you want to go for your next steps, and that's okay too. Everybody's got a different path, and that's fine. Mentors are also involved in the practicum. They might be some mentors from your advanced classes, or they could be completely new. It just depends on their availability and what kind of responses we get back from practicum mentors. So just be aware that you will have a mentor assigned to your group. You'll also have some backup mentors. So that way, if something happens with your assigned mentor, they get ill, they have to move, they have job responsibilities that overtake their time, anything like that, then you'll have other individuals that you can turn to as a backup to help with any kind of tech support or sort of project management needs. And then why should you participate? So it's a great opportunity to work on a development team, and it's kind of like test driving a car. So it gives you a chance to see what the apprenticeship is going to be like if you're going for the apprenticeship program. And it also gives you an opportunity to be able to see sort of what team development is like. So that way, when you get into that entry-level position, then you already know what it's like to be able to work collaboratively with others on the same code base. Marissa has a question. So go ahead, Marissa, and unmute.
Yeah, I was wondering about the mentors. So are they apprentices, or could they potentially be like a mentor from our current like React class?
Most of the cases, it's usually a mentor from your current class, or it might be a mentor from a previous iteration of the advanced classes. Most of the time, they are not apprentices, they are volunteers. So they are senior developers or junior developers, but they are people that are already out in the tech industry that are volunteering with our organization. So they should have good experience level. The Ruby on Rails class, we might be incorporating an apprentice as like a junior mentor with your team, just so that way apprentices get a little extra project management experience, and that way you have somebody that you can kind of touch on as far as questions about what the apprenticeship is like and or help with any kind of technical issues. We're still working out to see if we have an apprentice available to do that for the Ruby on Rails students, and or if that's something that they want to be involved with. So but in general, the majority of the students will be working with volunteer mentors who are developers out in the industry already. Yeah, great question. Any other questions so far? I can take a little break if anybody else has anything else coming to mind.
Hi, Mary Alice.
Yeah, hey, I see.
I'm curious about the apprenticeship. Is it possible to, if you're interested in pursuing that, is that an option instead of doing the practicum and then the apprenticeship?
Yeah, so students always have the opportunity to be able to apply directly to the apprenticeship. They do have to build a separate app by themselves, kind of like the pre-work that you did to get into an advanced class or the pre-work you did to get into the intro class. So there is a pre-work assignment if you're applying directly to apprenticeship. If you don't have experience working in a team environment, specifically in like web development in a team, then you would have a less likely chance of being accepted for the apprenticeship if you're applying direct from class into the apprenticeship and don't have team or group experience already on your side. So just keep that in mind, that it does kind of hurt your chances a little bit if you don't have that already. The practicum, the other sort of purpose of the practicum is so that way we can see how students who up until now have been working independently can work in a group to make sure that you'll work well in the kind of environment we have on the lab side, and that you'll do well in the apprenticeship program. So that's kind of the other part of practicum, is just to kind of see where you're at as far as skill level with the content that you'll be working with, as well as see sort of what your dynamics are in a group setting. Yeah.
So does that mean like if later in the practicum everything's going well and you could apply then?
You can, usually for the apprenticeship position for like outside applicants, I think they only review applications like once a month, and or if we have a new client sign on to the dev shop side that we need to have people on that project to be able to help build. So timing wise, you might not wind up having an opportunity to apply and be accepted mid-practicum. We do always kind of flag or dog ear our lab's calendar to know when practicum's ending. So that way we know, okay, we'll have apprentices at the end of practicum that we'll be able to bring on. So a lot of times the lab side will time when we accept projects and start them with coinciding when the practicum ends. Yeah, so mid-practicum doesn't make as much sense as either doing it at the end of practicum or doing it at the end of class. Great question, Curtis.
Also, if you decide to do the practicum, are the requirements different to apply for the apprenticeship afterwards, or does the project, is that considered into the whole application process?
Yeah, so the pre-work assignment, if you're applying direct to apprenticeship, is not needed if you're going through the practicum, because the project that your team is building throughout the practicum, as well as your final project and the work that you did throughout class and everything, sort of serves as the project or the example of the technical ability that you've built up to that point. Yeah, good question. Any other questions at the moment, or you want me to proceed on?
So
Yeah.
basically, if you're really wanting to go for the apprenticeship, then go through the practicum.
Yes, yeah, that's the best and preferred way to go. The exception would be like if you've been a developer in another tech stack before, or while you've been going through class, you've been working on a development team just in a different tech stack or in a different capacity, but you're already kind of familiar with sort of those Agile and Scrum and project management concepts that you'll be learning throughout practicum. So in that kind of situation, I think it's perfectly acceptable for you to apply at the end of class and before forego practicum and apply directly for the apprenticeship if you're in that kind of circumstance. But if you don't have any kind of team development specific experience, obviously most of us have had some kind of team interaction in our life, but if you're lacking team development experience, then I would encourage you to do practicum, because that will better your chances for getting into the apprenticeship. Other questions?
Will the project that we create as a team in the practicum be different from the application that we create if we just apply directly to the apprenticeship?
Yep, exactly. Yeah. So the small teams that are making up practicum, you all decide what you want to build for, sorry, excuse me, for the Ruby on Rails class. Each of you are building your own individual projects as your final project. So when you do final project presentations, watch everybody's and decide which of those projects you would like to work on in the practicum portion. And whoever has the most votes among the people who will be participating in practicum, that's the project that you work on. So you take that person's final project from class, pull it over into practicum, and you continue to build on it. You add features and update structures and all kinds of good stuff. For the React students, you start fresh from scratch. So the first week, you all will just kind of decide, like, what do we want to build? Do we want to build a blog app? Do we want to build like the Instagram knockoff? Do we want to build some other kind of like functionality that uses an open source API? So it can be sort of whatever your dream child is as a group, whatever you want to build. So it gives you a little bit more versatility than doing the pre-work assignment if you're applying direct to apprenticeship. Other questions so far?
I guess for the actual practicum, are the soft skills, are those like what the developers are looking for, like in each of your like presentations, like in your stand-ups, like how clearly you communicate a problem, like how clearly you describe like what you want to build out? Like, is that what the 2 months in the practicum is kind of like building you up for? Or is it like the complexity of like the application that you build?
Yeah, it's more about soft skills and more about sort of project process understanding and working in that sort of project process. It'll probably make a little bit more sense as I get a few more slides in and kind of show what the structure is like. But the main thing we want you to be taking away from Practicum is like handling merge conflicts, making sure that you're not affecting other people's code within your development team as you each assign and build on features, getting comfortable with the process of Agile and Scrum, where you have like these sprints of, okay, this is the feature we're going to work on for the next week or 2 weeks. So everybody just knuckle down, focus on this feature. And then just sort of the process of do a little bit, do a pull request, do a little bit, do a pull request, rather than, okay, I'm going to build like 3 pages for our site and push it all at once. Because if you're doing small chunks and scoping your project well and doing those small chunks and pushing them to your main published repository branch, you're going to run into fewer conflicts and fewer issues where somebody's code that they wrote for this feature breaks the person's code for this feature. So it's sort of like learning how to dance with each other is kind of a way to think of it. Make sure nobody steps on anybody's toes and everybody's on their feet at the end of it is the main focus for Practicum. If you have a working project at the end and it's awesome, great. But having a completed project at the end is really just a byproduct. The main thing is we want you to get comfortable with what it's like working in team development and understanding sort of the ins and outs of that sort of structural process. You know all the tech stuff because you've been working on all of that individually through the class. Now it's a chance for you to be able to see, okay, how do I put my moving pieces together with other people's moving pieces so it builds a nice big little machine of working pieces. Okay, let's go ahead and keep on going. We'll probably run into some more questions as we go, but that's perfectly fine. Let me get my mouse woken up and back where it needs to be. Okay, so how do you participate? At the end of the class, you'll be completing a form, and I'm going to post it in your class announcements after the final presentations are complete. So it'll be somewhere between July 15th to 20th. Those dates, keep an eye on your class announcements channel. I'll have a form posted and you'll fill out that form saying that you want to participate in Practicum. We ask who you'd like to be on a project with for the React class. I don't think that's going to wind up being applicable for the Ruby on Rails class because those of you that are finishing final projects on time will make up your group based on the numbers from what I'm seeing. Unless I'm completely wrong and we have some people, come up from behind and have a huge windfall at the end. But it'll be one Ruby on Rails group. And then depending on how many people are finishing their final project on time for the React class, will determine how many groups we have for React. Is there a question? Robal, did you have a question?
No, sorry. I think I
Okay.
just unmuted.
Okay, that's okay. I just wanted to make sure. So 15th to 20th, keep an eye on your class announcements channels for those forms. You must complete the form in order for us to know that you want to participate in Practicum. If we don't have your form by the deadline that we post on there, then we're going to assume you don't want to participate and we'll configure our groups accordingly. Okay, so let's take a look at the Practicum structure. So advanced classes, as I had mentioned, the final projects for the Ruby on Rails class, you're each doing your own project that you've come up out of your own design. For the React class, you've all been working on the to-do list app and or the blog app if you've been kind of building that alongside the textbook. So the final projects that the React class presents are your to-do list apps, what you've been doing as your coding assignment all along. And then Ruby on Rails, you'll present your unique projects that you've done. For the React class, you'll divide into small groups, and then you decide together what it is that you want to create. On the first week of your Practicum curriculum pages, then we've got some ideas and examples of here are some things that groups have done in the past and or just some ideas that you can toy around with. Like I'd mentioned earlier, blogs or to-do list or other functionality type apps like those. We've had folks do like a photography app. We had one that did like a chat app. So there's a bunch of different things that you can do and you just kind of decide together what it is that you want to build. The mentor that is assigned to your group should help you with picking out a project and kind of defining what the minimum viable products are for that project. So that way you don't wind up with this like huge dream child that isn't accomplishable in the 8-week period. So your mentor should help keep you scaling your project to the appropriate size for the 8-week timeframe that you'll be working on it for. For the Ruby on Rails class, as I had mentioned, so in the form that you all get between the 15th and 20th that you fill out, then you'll say whose final project that you saw during final project presentations you'd like to work on. You can vote for yourself. You don't have to vote for yourself. So whoever's project is most interesting to you, either how the data structure is set up, or if you are watching their presentation, you're like, ooh, it'd be really cool if they added such and such feature, then go ahead and just vote and rank the projects for what order you want to do those in. And whoever has the most votes, that project will then be used as your final, or used as your practicum project. So all of the small groups have their own mentor, and then we also have backup mentors available for the groups. So the backup mentors kind of cross groups, and they'll be familiar with all of the groups that are in that particular tech stack practicum, and you can reach out to them if you aren't able to get a hold of your primary assigned mentor. Questions about sort of this general program structure at all? Okay.
I have a question.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Are we working with so I mean on Rails?
Mm-hmm.
It is not clear to me if I am going to be working just with all the other people in Rails, or I'm going to be working at some point with those in React.
Excellent question. Yeah, so for this practicum, you will only be working with other students from your class, from your cohort. So all of the Rails students will be together, all of the React students will be together in their own little individual groups. So you won't necessarily work with everybody that you've been in class with for the React class, but for the Rails class, you will be working with everybody within your class that finishes their final project. Excellent question, Sam.
Thank you.
Any other questions so far about structure? Okay, so here's an example of sort of your new class week. So before you get your lessons on Wednesday, turn in your assignments by Tuesday. Since practicum is supposed to mimic more of an actual developer job and kind of give you a feel for that, and also mimic the apprenticeship program, so that way if you're accepted into that, then you already kind of get your feet under you as far as what that process looks like. So instead, your class week will be Monday through Friday. Again, if your team decides that time frame doesn't work for you and you want to do Tuesday through Saturday, or you want to do Sunday through Thursday or whatever, or maybe you want to do Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday or something, whatever works for your team, follow that. Just make sure that you're communicating and all on the same page about when to expect people to be working and when to expect people to be off. So throughout your week, you're going to want to regularly check your Slack channel and your project management device. So depending on your group, you might use a different project management device. We've had some groups use GitHub Projects, which is a feature on a GitHub repository that lets you create a Kanban board, which is basically ways to be able to kind of list different tickets and features, and within that list also incorporate who's working on that particular feature or item. So it's just a nice visual way to be able to organize who's doing what on the project. So some groups elect to use GitHub Projects, some use Trello boards, which is the same kind of concept, where you have these little tickets, these little cards that you make saying this is what that particular item is, this is who's working on it. So you can kind of visualize, okay, this person needs to get user authentication working before this person can create a profile page, or things of that nature. If it's better or easier for your team to do something different, like using a Google Docs or a spreadsheet, or however you want to do it, is perfectly fine. It's up to you all to decide what you want to do as far as project management goes for organization and communicating between the group. But you do want to regularly check Slack. Each individual group will have their own Slack channel. So that way it's just yourselves, your mentor, and your backup mentors that are on that channel. So you can communicate easily amongst yourselves without having 8 million other people in your group. Let's see here. Work on your tasks that you've assigned, that you've all divvied up amongst yourselves, and be sure to communicate with your team about questions, blockers, progress. So a good rule of thumb is to daily asynchronously just post, here's what I'm working on, here's what I've already accomplished. I can't do this piece until this happens. So just kind of check in with your group daily by just posting in your Slack channel and say, here's where I'm at with things, just want to make you all aware. And that way everybody's on the same page of where people are at in case your work depends on somebody else or vice versa. You'll have one in particular meeting day, and your mentor, it should be assigned at a time when your mentor and all of your team members can be together. So kind of like your mentor sessions, everybody kind of signed up for that particular mentor session time. You'll have a meeting day that you all determine, and that's going to work sort of like a sprint meeting, where you'll get together and say, okay, here's our plan for the week. Let's talk about who's going to be doing what projects for the week, and get an understanding of who's going to do what and who needs to have what done before the other person can do their piece and that kind of a thing. And just sort of check in about where are we at with the overall project, where are we going with the overall project. It's also a good opportunity on your meeting day to talk about, do we need to revise something? Like maybe we're going to include a feature, but we're running short on time because this piece took longer than that piece to do. So let's cut that out or revise how we were going to do something. So your meeting day is sort of like a big picture opportunity. Also, if you've run into any problems and haven't been able to get any help, work together on those problems and make any necessary alterations, that kind of a thing. Okay, weekends are optional. So if your team decides to work on weekends, great. If you decide not to work on weekends, that's fine too. And you would just continue on work on days that you all predetermine we're going to be working on these days. Throughout the 8 weeks, keep in mind that you want to focus on your learning goals in the form that you submit, saying, yes, I am participating in Practicum. We also have you think about what are your primary goals? Like, what do you want to get out of Practicum? Do you want to have more team experience? Do you want to build the skills that you've been doing in class? Like, do you still feel a little weak on some of those hooks and states and things like that? Or do you feel pretty good about it and you just want to be working with it more? So think about what your individual learning goals are and work towards those. And then also just work on building your team skills. Okay, so primary goals. This kind of goes back to what Tim was asking about earlier. The primary goals of the practicum are to give you exposure to some new things, if there are any new things that are applicable for your project. So for the React class, we include Firebase as sort of your data backend, sort of mock backend portion of your app. Throughout class, I think you've been using Airtable for your to-do list apps. So it's sort of a similar concept, but it's a different structure. So you'll get exposure to Firebase, which kind of gives you a basic understanding of API backend and how it's going to be used by front end. And you, of course, continue work with React on the front end. And then for the Ruby on Rails class, you'll continue your Ruby on Rails skills. You may want to incorporate some new gems or improve the user experience or app functionality of that final project and kind of just either build a better data structure on your backend portion and or do a couple little tweak things on your sort of mock front end structure that you'll build. Okay, and then the primary things we want you to get out of this, though, are to learn how to work cooperatively and collaboratively with others on a single body of code. So handling all of those kind of merge conflicts and getting all of those moving parts to work together seamlessly. We want you to learn about what the common workflow process is in the industry as far as Agile, Scrum, stand-ups, those kind of sort of housekeeping features as far as when you meet, how you meet, what you talk about during those meetings, and just the overall importance of communication with each other. We want you to get a little exposure and get comfortable using a project management device like the GitHub projects or like a Trello board or something where people who are managing projects can kind of keep track of who's doing what and where are they in that process. And then just learn about how projects are managed from concept for the React class, especially, you all are going to be coming up with this idea on your own and then through building and testing phases. And then if you're able to get to it, then deployment. If you aren't able to get to it with your app in the 8-week time, that's okay too. But we will have topics that kind of cover and give you an idea of what that deployment process looks like. And then, of course, seeing how merge conflicts are handled, as well as code reviews too. So in real world situations, then you'll have a project manager and or you'll have some kind of supervisor overseeing particular features or bug fixes or branches of that application or project. And so it gives you an opportunity to see how those conflicts are worked out, as well as sort of the professional experience you should have either if you are being reviewed or if you are reviewing somebody's code. So it gives you an idea of this is how to talk about constructively about here's what's not working, here's what is working, or here's what we need in order for things to work. And then, of course, at the very end, when you all present in the weekly cafe, then it gives you sort of an experience of demoing a project to be able to share about your learning experience or share about what it is that you've been building. Questions about sort of primary goals or what it is you're supposed to be getting out of Practicum?
I had a question.
Yeah.
So do we, so React class, do we have to, or are we expected to deploy our project as well?
It depends on what you get to. So it really just depends on what your project is that you're building, how it's scoped, and whether or not you have enough time to get to it. It's one of those things that it's hard to tell because it might be a moving target for you. You know, if you're going along just fine and there's a particular feature that your team struggles with and it takes you a little bit longer than you thought to be able to achieve that particular feature or aspect of your app, then it might push it back where you might not hit deployment by that time, by the end of the 8 weeks. So it depends, but we do have information in the curriculum portion of it that kind of helps you walk through that process for deployment. So it's optional, but great if you can do it. And if you can't, that's okay too.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so the curriculum, how is it going to be different or similar as far as what the curriculum itself looks like? Because I've alluded to there will be curriculum to kind of walk you through Firebase and how to learn Firebase and how to use it. And then for the React class, as well as deployment for the Rails and a couple of topics for deployment for the React apps as well. So you do have like weekly lessons, but the weekly lessons aren't, here's lesson materials that you have to watch these videos and check these boxes, and then here's a coding assignment that you have to do, because obviously all of the coding that's going to be done is going to be coding that builds your project. But we do sort of give you general outlines. So the lesson materials have less structure than the lesson materials you've been working with in class up to this point. So through the React class, for example, it's read these 3 chapters, or you know, do this particular coding assignment, that kind of a thing. These are going to be, here are things that you should look at and focus on as far as the process of building your application right now. Here are resource materials that if this particular topic applies to the project that you're building, then check out these resource materials and or do a little investigative research on your own if your application that your team is building varies from this. So it has less defined structure than what you've been used to so far for class. If you're using a different like gem or third-party library, or if you're doing some kind of bootstrap style structure, and it's a product that you haven't used up to this point, like, oh wait, no, Mocha and Chai is for Node. Next.js, I think one of the groups have used Next.js, that kind of a thing. So if you're using something along those lines, dive into those the documentation for that particular framework or structure that you're working with to be able to understand how you need to structure in order for it to work with the tools that you're implementing and the tools that you're using on your project. You will have objectives for your team, as well as things that you should accomplish on your own. So like week 1, you all need to determine what your meeting time is going to be. You need to start brainstorming your project by the end of the week or the middle of the second week. You should have your idea already outlined, maybe do a little bit of wireframing, that kind of thing, and start building your concept. For the Rails class, it'll be more along the lines of, here's our starting point, the final project that the person submitted. So let's talk about what features are we going to be changing, or is there anything we're going to be adding to it? Do we need to restructure the data structure, or add in additional pieces of data that maybe the person didn't consider when they were building their final project initially, that kind of a thing. So you'll have objectives throughout each week to kind of meet those objectives. You will have a little bit more regular schedule. So you'll want to communicate daily in Slack channels as far as this is where I'm at, this is what I'm working on, or at least every other day. So people are aware who's doing what when. And then of course you'll meet weekly to be able to collaborate together if you're stuck on any issues, and or to kind of get an idea of what your week's going to be looking like for your team. There will be a lot more collaboration than you've had up to this point, especially for your all's classes. The Node and React class we just started, they went ahead and like on their mentor sheet created a student study session time and that kind of a thing. So they're having a very proactive collaboration experience in their class. So in this instance, then you will be working together more. If somebody's working on a separate feature, you know how to do it. They're struggling with that particular feature because it's something that they wanted more practice with. They wanted to learn a little bit better. Help your teammate out. So it's not an individual mentality in Practicum. It's all work together, you know, pull together as a team. Okay, so let's talk about expectations. It is going to be a fast pace. 8 weeks is not a long time to build an app. So keep in mind when you're in the beginning design phases not to go too overboard with, oh, we want it to be a blog feature where people have like extra emoji keyboards added in and multiple user levels for whether or not they want to be an admin of a group or they want to be an individual. And like there are a lot of extra sort of features that you can build into an application. So kind of just keep in mind, start small, If you meet those small tasks early on and you want to start adding more features in, that's great. But start small and kind of grow from there, baby steps. For the time frame, this is 8 weeks is a very short time frame. So maybe throughout class, if you started your lessons on Wednesday or Thursday, you did your coding assignment Friday, and you're like, crap, I'm getting stuck on whatever this coding assignment is. I can't get my code to work. And you're struggling through it on Friday, on Saturday, on Sunday. And then Monday, you finally get around to asking a mentor for some assistance, or you reach out to a classmate for assistance. Don't wait that long in this situation. If you've been working on something for a couple of hours and it's like, this isn't going where it needs to go, talk to somebody, talk to your mentor, talk to your teammates, get help sooner than you would have done in class, because you don't have a long time frame with your practicum group to start with. So focus on your team and individual learning skills and understanding sort of that whole project environment and team environment. The project itself is just a byproduct. Whether or not your project is complete and ready to roll out and, you know, sell it on the App Store right now at the end of the 8 weeks does not matter a lick. We want to see how you're working together as a team, that you're getting exposure to stand-ups, Agile, Scrum, that you're getting exposure to merge conflicts, and that you're understanding the process, because up until now, you've just been writing your own code on a working branch, push it back to your main, write a code on a working branch, push it back to your main. This time you're going to have to be writing your code on a working branch and then push it back to a completely different repository, one that's not yours, one that's the project repository. And you need to make sure that your push doesn't conflict with another push somebody else might have done on a different feature at the same time. So it's really important to get comfortable with that process. Be sure to communicate. I cannot express that enough. If you're getting sick, come down with COVID, you just don't feel well, you have to take care of a sick family member. If you're going on vacation because it's summertime, if you've had a change in your job, change in your housing, you're moving, anything that might affect you're working on the project, that needs to be shared with your team in a timely manner. So that way it can be like, oh, okay, if you only have 2 days to work on this week, well, then let's these 2 people split up the other work that you would have needed to do over that time frame. You got to balance that workload. At the end of the practicum, you will have a self and peer evaluation form that you complete. So it's the exact same form. You just check a box if you're filling out the information about yourself, leave it unchecked if you're filling it out about others. And the main things that we focus on those evaluation forms is engagement. Were you showing up to meetings? Were you helping solve problems? Were you an active participant? Technical skills, do you seem like you have learned the content from the React and Ruby on Rails classes, the individual portion well enough? Have you built on those technical skills with maybe some new features that your project in Practicum is implementing? Communication, are you being sure that you're updating your teammates with where you're at with things? And are you communicating effectively and professionally with each other? Collaboration, so working together, being open to other people's ideas, that kind of a thing. And then initiative, if you're doing something new that you haven't encountered in the React class curriculum portion yet, are you going to find that information on your own? Are you trying to find the solution to a problem you're running into? So those are the things that you'll answer, both about how you feel you're performing in those areas and how you observed your teammates to be performing from your perspective. And then the presentations are the 5-minute demo to staff and apprentices to just talk about what your experiences was like, things that you learned, the progress that you were able to make on the application and within your own learning. Your self-evaluation form that you fill out is your apprenticeship application. So on there, just let us know, I'm first and most interested in applying to the apprenticeship. The other options that you have are retaking your class, taking a different advanced class, or just job hunting. So just give us feedback in your self-evaluation as far as what you would like to do as your next step on your journey towards becoming a developer. All right, questions about Practicum before we go over some basic apprenticeship information?
How early, like, would it be possible to like get a head start on the practicum stuff if you are interested? Like start grouping up, start like planning out, start wireframing stuff, like early stuff like that, Mary?
It's a little bit tricky to do that. So you can definitely start talking to your classmates to see who might be interested in grouping together. After those final project presentations from July 15th to 20th, when you're filling out your form showing that you're intending to participate in Practicum, then you'll put down the other classmates in your group that you would like to work with. We try and honor those as best as possible, but if 3 of you are East Coast and only available on Tuesdays for your meeting time, for your regular scheduled meeting time each week, and the 4th person that wanted to be a part of the group is West Coast, and they're only available on Fridays for the meeting time, obviously that's going to cause a hang up. So feel free to start talking amongst each other. You can even use that mentor channel for your class and be like, hey, does anybody just want to hop on and talk and get to know each other a little better to see as far as like, do our goals align for what we want to do? Do we have similar ideas of what we might like to build? That kind of a thing. So feel free to start talking to each other now. We will try and honor as best as possible your wishes as far as how you want to be grouped with each other. And then from there, like if you all feel like, yeah, we should all work as far as our time availability, we should be able to be a nice little unit together, then you're welcome to start brainstorming ideas and talk about things. Yeah, that's perfectly fine. Okay, so let's dive into apprenticeship. So the apprenticeship program is only available for people who are current residents of the United States or United States territories. The immigration status does not matter though. So you just have to be physically living here. It doesn't matter if you have a green card, if you have a visa, if you have none of those things, that doesn't matter because it winds up being sort of like a contract employment situation rather than an employee-employer relationship. So it's like you're being contracted as an apprentice to do this particular work. So legalization status doesn't matter for that. It's a monthly stipend of about $2,000. It is full-time work, so you are expected to do 40 hours a week on the project that you're assigned as an apprentice. There are somewhat flexible hours. You will have a few meetings throughout the week, just like in the practicum, you have that meeting once a week that your group needs to do with your mentor live on a Zoom call together. It's the same kind of a thing. You'll have 1 or 2 meetings at least throughout the week where you need to meet with the group that is building the project on our development shop side that you're assigned to. It's a 9 to 12 month commitment, so you will not be pursuing other employment during that time. If you have a part-time job that you have to work, obviously, because $2,000 isn't really quite enough to be living off of in a lot of places, that's perfectly fine to still be working your part-time job and doing your full-time apprenticeship hours as needed. But at the end of that 9 to 12 month period, then we work with you to kind of help with job applications and job placement. We don't have any current relationship structures in place that directly deposit you into a company's entry-level positions, but we are working on those. Hopefully by the end of 9 to 12 months, then we'll have programs better structured to kind of shift you right from apprenticeship into an entry-level position or into an internship program with a tech company. That's what we're working on building right now. During the apprenticeship, you are assigned to a real world project with real clients. All of the projects that we take on the development shop side are either social justice or community improvement and community engagement type of projects, or else they're internal projects. So things that we're building for our programs to continue on. For example, we've got one group that built an app for our apprentices to use to help with their project management. And we have another group that is building an app for our classes side to be able to kind of give you a better, more user-friendly interface for getting your lesson materials and that kind of a thing. So we do have a couple of internal projects. If you want to see anything that the labs side is currently building, you can go to codethedream.org/portfolio. And that shows you sort of what, as an organization, our lab side, our development shop side has been building or has built in the past. Most of the other developers are also apprentices that are on your team. You'll have a project manager and you'll have a senior developer that are overseeing all of the apprentices working together on this real world project. And it'll be varying experience levels. So some of the apprentices on a particular project are almost out the door because they're towards the end of their 9 to 12 month period and are looking for jobs. You have a number that are sort of in that mid-range where they aren't just onboarded and they've been working with the project for a little while, but they're still continuing to learn and build. And then you have folks that'll be new, that'll be onboarding as well. So I think that kind of gives you a good idea as far as apprenticeship questions about that process and sort of what the apprenticeship part looks like. Good. Okay. Question and answer time. Unmute, throw them up in the chat. Give me all your questions. That's what we're here for. Let's talk about it. Or
Well,
maybe
thank
we
you
answered
for,
all the questions earlier. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, I
Sia.
was just gonna say thank you for providing this info session because
Yeah.
I wasn't familiar with what the practicum was all about, and now I feel like, oh, this is great for my growth and learning ability to continue on this track. So
Yeah, when you
definitely.
hear practicum, it's just like okay, whatever, what is that? And when you're in class, it's like, I need to be focusing on what I'm learning in class. So we always like to do this for advanced classes, so that way you guys kind of get an idea of what's next down the road. What's your next stop on the turnpike? Other questions or anything? And if you think of stuff after the fact, like you all know, you can reach me on Slack. So feel free to just pop something up in your class discussion channel. If it's something that you want other people to be like, hey, this is probably a question other people are asking too. Or you can just direct message me if you're like, this might only apply to me and my circumstances or my personal goals, that kind of a thing. Feel free to just Slack me or email me if you have particulars that you think of down the road.
I was thinking, and I can't remember because I don't know if I looked at it recent enough. So is there a mentor and a project lead, or are those just interchangeable words?
They're just interchangeable words, really. So you all will work together as far as like the organization of it, and your mentor is really supposed to serve the purpose of like, if you're getting too far off track or your scope is too big on your project, like you're trying to do more than what can be accomplished, they're kind of there to sort of help guide you and keep you in check, because you all wouldn't have had any experience with team development up to this point. And there are a lot of things that it's like, you don't know what you don't know. So they're there to kind of help guide you. And if you run into any technical issues on the things that you're working on, to be a resource that you can go to be like, why isn't this working? Help me figure this out. But as far as like the concept of the idea and communicating as far as who's doing what and divvying up those tasks to individuals, that's something that you all should work collaboratively on together. So it shouldn't be a case of the mentors there saying, this is your project and you're doing this and you're doing that and you're doing this. Like, it's, you all work together to decide who's doing what, and the mentor is just there to be like, yeah, that's something that should be reasonable and should be able to be accomplished by you all, and I'm here if you need me, kind of a situation.
Okay, so the mentor is more of a guide, and we are driving, like we are driving ourselves as a group.
Yeah, you all kind of drive yourselves together. Exactly. Very communal. Other questions?
Yes. Hello, are you able to hear me well?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine, Marcus. What's up?
Awesome. I have two questions. One, for the apprenticeship, asking about the time commitment. I saw the range being 9 months to 12 months. My question is this range kind of like a minimum time frame, and are apprentices allowed to stay longer than 12 months potentially?
Yeah, that's something that you'll want to discuss after you're in the apprenticeship role. I don't know for sure. I know in the past we have had apprentices stay for multiple years, but I know they were also kind of edging more towards kind of keeping people in that 9 month to 12 month time frame. And you can stay on, and like, it's not a case of once you hit the 12-month mark, once you hit your 1-year anniversary, you're not kicked out of apprenticeship. Like, you stay on until you found your job. But in that 9 to 12 month range, then we'll be working with you more to be able to get you into a developer position, because $2,000 a month is not enough to be living off of. And after 9 months to a year in the apprenticeship program, you should have some really awesome skills to be able to get into junior developer roles where you're making, 70,000 plus a month, not a month, 70,000 plus a year. God, that would be great, making 70,000 a month, 70,000 plus a month or so in a new job with a development company that can help that become your primary source of income.
Awesome.
Yeah. And 70 is just a random figure I pulled out of my head, by the way. Like it might be lower, it might be higher. We just want to make sure that you find, yeah, 70,000 a day. Wouldn't that be awesome? Sign me up for that. Woohoo. No, but it'll be a significantly greater income working for another tech company than working for our development shop side because we are a nonprofit. So all of our income is either through our clients or through grants. So we've got a stricter budget to follow than, you know, somebody like Google or Airbnb or Duke or like any of the major government offices or educational facilities or tech companies that are out there. So
awesome. That sounds great. For my second question,
Yeah.
I was going to ask about the practicum. You mentioned specifically for React, maybe that some people dealt with social media applications as a project, or like maybe a chat app. And I just was wondering if are these projects something that we can view prior to signing up for practicum? Is this something I can just
I
see
think
through the prep list?
probably so. I would definitely like, I'll need to check with those teams and make sure that they're okay with me sharing their app with you all. Because I don't, I want to respect people's privacy as far as like, well, no, I worked really hard on that. I don't want another team to be able to copy it, kind of a thing. So I'll just check with them to see if they're cool with demonstrating it. The chat app one was kind of interesting because they were able to take it to deployment. And so for their presentation, they were like, here's the link. Everybody just sign on and create yourself an account. And we were all sitting there chatting back and forth with each other during their presentation. So it was pretty fun. But yeah, I'll check in with the teams to be able to see. At the very least, I can share the video of their presentations so that way you can see what that looks like. So I'll put that up this weekend so that way you can take a look and see, okay, this is what they built, to kind of get an idea of this is what the last group was able to accomplish at the end of 8 weeks, if that helps.
Yeah, definitely. My aim was to kind of see, I guess, how pressuring that 8-week time frame is and what many people are able to accomplish. No need to definitely look directly at their code or anything, but that was cool. I thank you.
Perfect. That sounds great. That's a great question, Marcus. Thank you. Let's see here. So the examples that I was giving as far as like the chat app or things like that, yes, those are just examples. You all can decide as a group as far as picking your idea, and it can be anything. Yeah, the mentor will help make sure that what you've selected is something that's doable within the time frame. Absolutely. Yeah, and I'll post that video so that way you can kind of see those demos as far as what was achievable.
So I wanted to know what, so groups that have been really, really successful, I guess, in the practicum, like what's something you observed that they did beforehand? I guess some like in selecting, or just, I guess, choices they just made in their group about how they would approach their project.
Yeah, that's a great question. The first thing I would caveat is no group is flawless. There will always be times that maybe you're getting on each other's nerves a little bit, but you work through it. That's completely normal in any kind of group setting, to have a week where it's like, ugh, they're really frustrating me. But, you know, just kind of keep cool and communicate and work together. The biggest thing is being aware of each other and what your limitations are, as well as encouraging each other. So I feel like the most successful groups are the ones where if somebody has a particular topic from the React class, for example, that they were weak on, then it's like, okay, well, if you'd like more experience with that, then let's put you on an assignment that has you utilize that skill so you can build on that skill. And we're also here for you if you're having trouble understanding it. And also just being aware of each other's sort of strengths and weaknesses, and being flexible. So if it's like, I started this, I've bit off more than I can chew, I really don't understand what I'm working with here, it would be better in the hands of somebody who is more confident in how to build that particular structure. So then switch roles. So having that flexibility and just being in tune with one another and being open and communicating about, this is what I think I can do, this is what I'd like to try and do, and helping each other out with understanding limitations, understanding growth perspective as far as what you want to do, and being supportive of one another. Those are the biggest keys for sure. And also kind of keep in the back pocket, like, yeah, we might butt heads once or twice, but it's okay. We're all working towards the same end goal here. Like, we all got to get along.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. Yes, yeah, getting on others' nerves is good practice for real jobs, was one of the comments in the chat. Yeah, you can't always choose your coworkers, so you do have to kind of learn some of that a little bit as well. In that same vein, though, like our environment that we've had that hopefully has been your all's experience throughout your program so far, we want it to be a supportive, encouraging, loving environment. You know, we take very seriously sort of this family feel that we're all here to help each other out. So if there is any kind of like, that was really uncalled for, or whoa, somebody's really like going off on me, like, then we need to be aware of that and we need to kind of come together and work out those problems and mediate and come to a solution, because we should not be disrespecting each other. Just like in a real job, you should not be disrespecting your coworkers. You should not be telling your boss to F off or anything along those lines. So, you know, you gotta work, be a good citizen, be a good humanitarian, and work with each other in a professional and respectful way. Yeah. All right. Well, I'll scrap the recording, but I'll stick around. So if anybody has other questions or anything, then, you know, feel free to either drop them in my inbox, drop them in a Slack message, or else post them in discussion channels, anything along those lines, to be able to get your questions answered. So thanks, everybody.